I want to remember that these characters are scary. I don't think you can take Dracula and make him a secret agent. This character's been done so much in so many movies that the approach is often like, it's Dracula, but he's Jason Bourne. He works for the government. You know, and I can see the trailer now. It's like, first they feared him. Now he works for them. The undead has a hall pass at the CIA. I don't want to see him as a secret agent. I don't think these, layers of mayonnaise are needed to make the character palatable for a modern audience. The way to do it, in my humble opinion, is to strip away all the iconography, capes and fangs and coffins and crosses, and just look at the essence of a sociopath that drinks blood and make it scary. Like when the original Dracula novel and indeed the original film was released, it was scary to those audiences, so make it scary for a modern audience.
I'm afraid it's quite serious. My dear, I'm sure Count Dracula will excuse you. You must go to your room, as Professor Van Helsing suggests.
It's the symbol of them that's iconic, not the original character. I don't know many modern teenagers who would have read the original H.G. Wells novel, but they're aware of the Invisible Man because they grew up watching Hotel Transylvania, Adam Sandler voicing Dracula and stuff like this. It's part of the reason I think a lot of these iconic monster characters have become safe. It's because they're so ubiquitous. So that's part of the challenge with these characters, is how do you strip all that stuff away? My primary goal was, how do I make this character of the Invisible Man scary again to a modern audience? The best way for me to do that was to forget about all the iconography and everything that's been done with the character in the past, kind of wipe the slate clean and just start again with this character and the essence of the character and try and build a story around it.
Adrian is dead. He's not dead. He has figured out a way to be invisible.
How do I make this guy scary? And as I was figuring out the answer to that question, this idea of a woman escaping this abusive relationship and this ex-partner of hers stalking her, it started to fit. It seemed to be where the story wanted to go. As I was writing it, I started researching it, because anything I write, I'll start researching, interviewing people. And so I interviewed some counselors at a domestic violence shelter in Los Angeles. And the more I talked to them, it starts informing the script. Every time I've written a screenplay, there'll be a point when I'm interviewing someone and some of that research ends up making the script stronger or more authentic. We've seen movies depicting physical abuse a lot, obviously, but I think psychological abuse and being manipulated by someone is maybe harder to photograph, and it's something that was interesting to me. I felt myself wanting to go in that direction more. Somebody who is losing their mind because of the way someone else was manipulating them. And it just fits with the idea of the Invisible Man. If you think about that character as a metaphor, like an unseen man that's in your space. And he can do anything he wants, he can mess with you in these ways, and you're defenseless. That just, I think it fit well with the idea of, this woman being gaslit and manipulated to the point of madness. We used practical effects that would have been used on the original 1933 Invisible Man. Props guys hidden in cabinets, pulling doors on a string, and I'm saying they're on the set in the shot. The only reason you can't see them is that they're inside a cabinet. Everything from strings to like state-of-the-art CGI where you have to completely remove a stunt performer who's wearing a green bodysuit. It's all that stuff. For me, I don't really care how the sausage is made. I just want the end result to be seamless. And so if it takes a string, I'm fine with that. Sometimes it's better, you can go around the block with CGI and it takes months and the end result isn't quite satisfying. And at the end of the day, someone pulling a door closed with a string or moving a prop with a piece of string can be more effective because, as I said, the goal is realism, and that is real. The thing is moving. You're not faking anything. I wanted the film to be so grounded that when people watch it, they just took for granted that this was actually being photographed. A lot of times when you see movies with huge budgets, the CG really calls attention to itself. Like you're so aware that you're watching something that was created in a computer. What I'm trying to do is something completely different. It's invisible CGI. I was like, let's degrade it, defocus it, I want this shot to look less crystal clear for the sake of realism, which is not the first instinct of a visual effects artist. They want their beautiful work to be clean and crystal clear and sleek. I go the other way. I'm like, throw it out of focus, anything to make the audience think that what they're seeing is actually in front of the lens.
Easy listening. Where are you? Where are you? Show yourself!
I mean, I don't necessarily think that horror has changed. I think it's always evolving. You know, it goes through these little micro trends and these ebbs and flows. And there's so many different subgenres of horror that each one has its moment in the sun. In the 90s, suddenly Scream came out, and it was these ironic slasher movies where the characters were all aware that they were in a slasher film, and that was kind of the hot thing for 5 minutes. And then in the wake of Saw, suddenly you had these intense R-rated, gory films, and then that finished, and then it was supernatural films, and then with The Walking Dead, suddenly zombie movies were having a moment. It always mystifies me when somebody says, horror's back. And I'm like, really? Wait, it never goes away. What appears and then disappears are the various subgenres. You know, slasher films will be popular for a while, a year or so, and then they'll leave. But then ghost movies will come in, and zombie movies, and pretty soon, monster movies are going to have a moment. It really depends on which subgenre of horror is having its moment on this carousel of popularity. Something that's being talked about a lot right now is this so-called elevated horror, which is code for horror that it's okay to like. But if anyone tried to present that to me as a new thing, like horror's really, critics are loving it right now. That's never happened before. I'd be like, The Exorcist? I mean, that was nominated for Best Picture. It's not a new thing. I think that in the 70s you had these marquee filmmakers like William Friedkin and Richard Donner, and then in the early 80s, Stanley Kubrick making horror films. And then all of a sudden in the VHS era, there was a little slump in quality and production quality, and that was my era. I grew up going to sleepovers where we would be watching Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5. The thing that is talked about right now is that a new type of filmmaker is making horror films. Movies that have one foot in Sundance and one foot in the multiplex. And I like that. As a horror fan, I want intellectually deeper and more challenging horror films out there.